The year is 2024. The world seems stable. The US economy hums along, seemingly invincible. Yet, beneath the surface, a storm brews. Hidden cracks widen in the foundation of the financial system. Warning signs flash, unnoticed or ignored. Experts whisper of unsustainable debt, inflated markets, and systemic risks. Few heed their warnings. Life goes on, blissfully unaware of the impending catastrophe. The average American family enjoys the comforts of modern life. They work hard, pay their bills, and dream of a secure future. Their savings grow steadily in banks they trust. Their homes, often the cornerstone of their financial security, appreciate in value. The American dream, though sometimes elusive, feels within reach. But this normalcy is an illusion, a house of cards built on a shaky foundation. The dollar, once the bedrock of the global economy, is now starting to collapse. Years of reckless spending, unchecked borrowing, and a disregard for financial prudence have taken their toll. The stage is set for a financial disaster unlike anything the American people have ever experienced. This is not a prediction. It is happening now. History will whisper warnings of future financial upheavals. The Great Depression will serve as a stark reminder of economic fragility, leaving scars on future generations. The Great Recession will be a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of global finance, shaking the world once again. From the ashes of these crises, lessons will emerge, opportunities for reform, and a chance to build a more resilient system. But those lessons will go unheeded. The reforms, deemed too costly or inconvenient, will be cast aside. The siren song of easy money, cheap credit, and speculative bubbles will prove too tempting to resist. The seeds of a far greater crisis will be sown, fertilized by complacency and a collective amnesia about the true cost of financial recklessness. The ghosts of past failures will whisper through the halls of power. They will warn of hubris, of unchecked greed, of the dangers of ignoring history. Their voices will go unheard, drowned out by the chorus of those who believe this time is different. But the laws of economics, like the laws of physics, will be unforgiving. What goes up will come down. And soon, the collapse of the US dollar will unfold before our eyes, a stark reality we will no longer be able to ignore. It begins, as these things often do, with a tremor. A sudden drop in the stock market, a spike in interest rates, a ripple of fear through the financial world. Then, the earthquake. A major bank, burdened by bad debts and toxic assets, collapses. Panic spreads like wildfire. Runs on banks are becoming commonplace. ATMs are running dry. The financial system, once a well-oiled machine, is seizing up. The dollar, its value plummeting, is going into free fall. The unthinkable is happening. The US economy, once the envy of the world, is in ruins. For the average American, the news is a hammer blow. Their life savings, painstakingly accumulated over years of hard work, are evaporating overnight. Mortgages are becoming impossible to pay. Jobs are vanishing as businesses shutter their doors. The world they knew, the world of stability and predictability, is gone. They are now living in the aftermath, facing a new and terrifying reality. The collapse of the first major bank is sending shockwaves through the financial system. Like dominoes falling, other banks, burdened by their own toxic assets and a sudden freeze in lending, are beginning to crumble. The FDIC, the supposed guarantor of deposits, is overwhelmed. It can only cover a fraction of the losses, leaving millions of Americans with nothing but empty promises. The news is spreading like wildfire, fueled by social media and frantic word of mouth. Lines are snaking around city blocks as people desperately try to withdraw their savings, only to be met with locked doors and empty ATMs. The banking system, once a symbol of security and stability, has become a source of fear and panic. Trust, the bedrock of any financial system, is evaporating overnight. The government, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the collapse, is struggling to respond. Emergency measures announced in a series of late-night press conferences are proving too little, too late. The financial system, once a complex web of interconnected institutions, is unraveling at an alarming rate. The gears of the economy, starved of the lubricant of credit and confidence, are beginning to grind to a halt. For the average American family, the news of the financial meltdown is a hammer blow. They watch in disbelief as their life savings, meticulously accumulated over years of hard work and sacrifice, vanish into thin air. The promise of a secure retirement, of a college education for their children, of a comfortable life, evaporates overnight. The Jones family, living in a modest suburb, are typical of millions caught in the financial maelstrom. John, a construction worker, lost his job weeks earlier when the housing market crashed. His wife, Mary, a nurse, is now the sole breadwinner, her salary barely enough to cover their mortgage and bills. Their savings, once a source of comfort, are gone, wiped out when their bank went under. The Smith family, a retired couple living on a fixed income, faces a similarly bleak future. Their pension fund, invested heavily in the stock market, has been decimated. Their life savings, carefully managed over decades, are gone, swallowed by the collapse of their bank. Their golden years, once filled with the promise of travel and leisure, are now clouded by anxiety and uncertainty. As the collapse of the US dollar begins, the social safety net, already strained by years of austerity and political neglect, is starting to fray and tear. Unemployment is soaring, overwhelming state unemployment offices. Food banks, struggling to meet the needs of a growing number of hungry families, are facing empty shelves and dwindling donations. Charities and nonprofit organizations, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the crisis, are struggling to provide even basic necessities. Lines for food, clothing, and shelter are stretching for blocks, a stark reminder of the growing gap between the haves and the have-nots. The American dream, once a beacon of hope for millions, is becoming a distant memory for many. The government, its coffers depleted by the costs of bailing out Wall Street and fighting foreign wars, seems powerless to stop the bleeding. The social contract, the unwritten agreement between citizens and their government, is breaking. In its place is growing a sense of betrayal, of anger, and of fear. The impending collapse of the financial system is sending shockwaves through the housing market. Mortgages, once considered safe investments, are becoming toxic assets overnight. Home values are plummeting. The American dream, symbolized by homeownership, is turning into a nightmare for millions. Families who have scrimped and saved for their down payment, who have poured their heart and soul into their homes, are finding themselves underwater. They owe more than their houses are worth. Foreclosure notices, once a rarity, are becoming a common sight in neighborhoods across America. The Jones family, their savings wiped out by the bank collapse, is falling behind on their mortgage payments. The bank, once a faceless entity, is becoming a relentless adversary. Phone calls are turning into threatening letters, which are then escalating to legal notices. The threat of losing their home, their sanctuary, is hanging over them like a dark cloud. As foreclosures mount, families are being forced out of their homes, displaced and dispossessed. Many are moving in with relatives, straining already tight living spaces and family relationships. Others are ending up in shelters, their lives upended, their futures uncertain. The Smith family, their retirement dreams shattered, are facing the unthinkable: eviction from the home they have lived in for over 30 years. Their modest pension, once enough to cover their expenses, is no longer sufficient. With heavy hearts, they are packing their belongings, their memories boxed up, their future uncertain. The streets of America's cities and suburbs, once symbols of prosperity, are beginning to tell a different story. Boarded up houses, stark reminders of the financial carnage, are dotting the landscape. Moving trucks are becoming a common sight, a testament to the scale of the displacement. The ongoing collapse of the US dollar is having a profound impact on the social fabric of America. Cities and suburbs, once vibrant centers of community life, are being transformed. Neighborhoods, once characterized by a sense of shared prosperity, are becoming fragmented and increasingly desperate. As unemployment soars, Businesses are shuttering, unable to survive the economic storm. Main streets, once bustling with activity, are becoming ghost towns, their storefronts empty, their windows dark. The sense of community, once a source of strength and resilience, is beginning to fray at the edges. Parks and playgrounds, once filled with the laughter of children, are becoming places of refuge for the growing homeless population. Tents and makeshift shelters are sprouting up, a visible reminder of the human toll of the economic collapse. The American dream, once a promise of opportunity and upward mobility, is becoming a distant memory for millions. The financial contagion, spreading like wildfire through the veins of the global economy, is now reaching the heart of the American job market. Businesses, large and small, once brimming with optimism and expansion plans, are now facing a stark reality of dwindling demand, frozen credit lines, and an uncertain future. The lifeblood of commerce, consumer spending, is slowing to a trickle, leaving businesses with no choice but to make drastic cuts. Layoffs, once a last resort, are becoming a daily occurrence. Pink slips, delivered with apologies and regret, are landing on desks with the thud of finality. The unemployment rate, a statistic once relegated to the business section of the newspaper, is now dominating headlines. Its steady climb a barometer of the nation's deepening economic malaise. The job market, once a source of opportunity and upward mobility, has transformed into a battleground for survival. The Jones family, already reeling from the loss of their savings and facing imminent foreclosure, is dealt another blow. John, despite his tireless efforts to find work in a shrinking construction industry, remains unemployed. The construction boom that had once promised steady work and a decent living has evaporated, leaving skilled workers like him with few options and a growing sense of despair. The impact of the job market collapse is being felt across all sectors and income levels as the US dollar begins to fail. White-collar professionals, once accustomed to the security of corner offices and generous benefits packages, are now finding themselves thrust into the ranks of the unemployed. The competition for even entry-level positions has become fierce, a humbling experience for those who once enjoyed a privileged position in the workforce. David, a former marketing executive with an Ivy League MBA, now spends his days scouring online job boards and attending crowded job fairs. His tailored suits and polished resume, once symbols of his success, now feel like relics from a bygone era. The rejection letters, once a distant fear, are piling up, each one chipping away at his confidence and sense of self-worth. The streets of America's cities, once bustling with the energy of commerce and ambition, are beginning to reflect the nation's economic despair. The homeless population is swelling, with many new faces joining the ranks of those who have long called the streets their home. The faces of the newly homeless, a former teacher, a laid-off factory worker, a single mother who has exhausted all other options, serve as a stark reminder that economic hardship can strike anyone, at any time. As the job market begins to contract, the social fabric of professional life is starting to unravel. Networking events, once opportunities for career advancement and social connection, are taking on a somber tone, with attendees sharing stories of job losses and economic hardship rather than celebrating successes. The camaraderie that once existed between colleagues, forged through shared goals and professional challenges, is giving way to a sense of competition and distrust. Rumors of further layoffs and company closures are circulating like wildfire, creating an atmosphere of anxiety and paranoia. The workplace, once a source of purpose and social interaction, is becoming a battleground for survival. For many, the loss of a job means more than just the loss of a paycheck. It represents a loss of identity, a loss of purpose, and a loss of the social connections that once provided a sense of belonging and stability. The psychological toll of unemployment, often overlooked in the cold statistics of economic reports, is becoming profound and far-reaching. The economic earthquake that is now shattering the nation's financial foundations is sending tremors through the very core of American society. The social fabric, woven over generations of shared prosperity, common values, and a belief in upward mobility is beginning to fray at the edges, strained by the weight of widespread hardship, growing inequality, and a loss of faith in the American dream. The social contract, the unwritten agreement between citizens and their government, is fraying as the government seems unable or unwilling to provide a safety net for its citizens. The gap between the haves and the have-nots, a chasm that has been widening for decades, is now gaping open, a stark reminder of the unequal distribution of pain and suffering. Neighborhoods, once vibrant and diverse, are becoming increasingly segregated along economic lines. Those fortunate enough to be weathering the financial storm are retreating behind gated communities and security systems, their isolation a stark contrast to the growing desperation on the streets outside. The sense of community, once a source of strength and resilience, is eroding as suspicion and distrust take root. The psychological toll of the impending economic collapse is already profound and far-reaching, casting a long shadow over the lives of millions of Americans. The stress of job loss, financial ruin, and an uncertain future is manifesting in a surge in mental health problems, from anxiety and depression to substance abuse and domestic violence. The mental health system, already overburdened and underfunded, is struggling to cope with the surge in demand for services. Waiting lists for therapy and counseling are stretching for months, leaving many to grapple with their demons alone and without support. The stigma surrounding mental illness, while slowly receding, still prevents many from seeking the help they desperately need. The Jones family, once a picture of middle-class stability, is finding their bonds tested as they struggle to cope with the fallout from the economic collapse. John, haunted by his inability to provide for his family, is spiraling into a deep depression, withdrawing from his wife and children. Mary, now the sole breadwinner, is struggling to keep their family afloat, her own emotional and mental health fraying under the relentless pressure. As the collapse of the US dollar begins to unfold and the social fabric starts to fray, crime rates, which had been steadily declining for decades, are now starting to tick upward. Desperate times, it seems, are giving rise to desperate measures. Property crime, fueled by growing poverty and desperation, is soaring. Petty theft, once a nuisance, is becoming a fact of life. The streets, once considered safe, are taking on an edge of unpredictability. Parents, once accustomed to allowing their children to play freely in parks and playgrounds, are now keeping them close, their eyes scanning for potential threats. The sense of security, once taken for granted, is evaporating, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. The Smith family, their retirement dreams shattered, their savings wiped out, are finding themselves the victims of a home invasion. The perpetrators, a group of desperate teenagers, make off with their meager possessions, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a lingering sense of vulnerability. The crime, once unthinkable in their quiet suburban neighborhood, serves as a stark reminder that no one is immune to the consequences of the economic collapse. The collapse of the United States dollar is beginning. The disintegration of our familiar societal structures, while undeniably catastrophic, is sowing the seeds of resilience. Americans, stripped of their reliance on a failing system, are starting to adapt, drawing upon their innate resourcefulness and a spirit of community that had, in better times, often been overshadowed by consumerism and individualism. The Jones family, facing eviction and John still grappling with unemployment, are finding a glimmer of hope in an unexpected place: their community. Neighbors, once strangers separated by fences and busy lives, are beginning to connect, sharing what little they have and offering support in ways they never thought possible. A spirit of cooperation is beginning to blossom, a small but powerful antidote to the prevailing sense of despair. Mary, her nursing skills in high demand, is bartering her services for food and other essentials. John, his construction skills still valuable, is helping repair damaged homes in exchange for shelter and food for his family. The traditional economy might be crumbling, but the spirit of exchange, of valuing skills and labor, is enduring. As the United States dollar begins its downward spiral, Losing its value with each passing day, people are starting to lose faith in its ability to serve as a reliable medium of exchange. Barter systems, once relegated to the fringes of the economy, are emerging as a practical and increasingly vital alternative. Skills and services, once quantified in dollars and cents, are now being traded for essential goods and services. Local exchange trading systems, or LETs, informal networks that facilitate the exchange of goods and services using a local currency or a system of credits, are gaining popularity. These systems, operating outside the constraints of the traditional banking system, are providing a lifeline for individuals and families struggling to make ends meet. The LETs not only facilitate trade, but also foster a sense of community and mutual support. The Smith family, their pension fund decimated, are finding themselves relying on a local LETs to supplement their dwindling resources. Mrs. Smith, an avid gardener, trades her surplus produce for eggs from a neighbor who keeps chickens. Mr. Smith, a retired mechanic, offers his skills in exchange for haircuts and other services. The LETs, while not a panacea, are providing a vital safety net and a sense of community in a time of profound uncertainty. The collapse of the United States dollar is beginning to have a ripple effect on the food supply chain. Supermarket shelves, once overflowing with an abundance of choices, are growing bare as deliveries become infrequent and unpredictable. Food prices are skyrocketing, pushing fresh produce and other staples out of reach for many families struggling to survive. Faced with the very real prospect of hunger, communities are beginning to take matters into their own hands. Vacant lots, once slated for development, are being transformed into community gardens, bursting with life and the promise of sustenance. Neighbors, once strangers, are working side by side, sharing their knowledge of gardening and their hopes for a more sustainable future. Food sharing initiatives, organized through churches, community centers, and online platforms, are springing up across the country. Families with surplus food are sharing with those in need, recognizing that in these extraordinary times, solidarity and compassion are essential for survival. The act of sharing food, a basic human need, is becoming a powerful symbol of resilience and a testament to the enduring strength of community in the face of adversity. The collapse of the United States dollar is marking a profound turning point in American history. The old world, built on a foundation of consumerism, individualism, and an unwavering faith in the free market, is crumbling. In its place, a new reality is emerging, one shaped by scarcity, resilience, and a renewed appreciation for community and self-reliance. The financial ruin, while devastating, is exposing the fragility of the system and the illusory nature of the American dream for many. It is also igniting a spirit of innovation and adaptation, forcing people to confront their vulnerabilities and forge new paths forward. The traditional markers of success, material wealth, social status, and professional achievement are being redefined in the crucible of crisis. The Jones family, their dreams of homeownership and financial security shattered, are emerging from the crisis transformed. They are learning the true meaning of resilience, the importance of community, and the value of self-sufficiency. They are discovering that true wealth lies not in the accumulation of possessions, but in the strength of their relationships, the satisfaction of their labor, and the resilience of their spirit. As the nation begins to struggle with rebuilding, the echoes of the impending collapse are already being felt. The gleaming skyscrapers of Wall Street, once symbols of American economic might, will soon stand as stark reminders of the hubris and short-sightedness that precipitated the crisis. The shopping malls, once temples of consumerism, will become eerie monuments to a bygone era of abundance and excess. Yet, even in the ruins, there will be glimmers of hope. The crisis, for all its devastation, will force a long overdue reckoning with the unsustainable trajectory of the pre-collapse world. It will expose the flaws in a system that prioritizes profit over people, that celebrates individualism over community, and that worships at the altar of perpetual growth. The collapse of the United States dollar will be a brutal wake-up call, a stark reminder that the pursuit of material wealth, while seductive, is no guarantee of happiness or security. It will force Americans to confront uncomfortable truths about their collective values and priorities. It will also, however, create the space for a more just, equitable, and sustainable future to emerge, one rooted in the timeless values of community, cooperation, and a deep respect for the natural world.